Signore e signori, buonasera, benvenuti alla casa italiana zerilli-marimò della New York University. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all here tonight for the presentation of Tech and the City by Maria Teresa Cometto and Alessandro Piol, and to have the fortune to have with us two distinguished members of the panels that are protagonists of the high-tech revolution that Maria Teresa and Alessandro talk about in their book. I'm particularly pleased because with this event we also start a new series that we call Eppur si muove, and yet it moves. And many of you will recognize the citation from Galileo Galilei that at the end of the Inquisition trial against him, in which he had to say that the earth stands still, he said, and yet it moves. And we refer it to Italy and to the fact that it seems that the signals that come from Italy are of stagnation, slow growth, sort of a lack of enthusiasm and hope for the future in general. This book is not about Italy. This is a book about New York and about the high-tech revolution in New York. I found particularly interesting the fact that there is even a mapping of the high-tech revolution in the city according to the different neighborhoods, and to discover that the center of this revolution is right here, a few blocks from here in Union Square. So it's first and foremost, it's a book on New York and on what happened in these last 20 years, let's say. But there are also some Italians that are protagonists. Well, first of all, it's narrated by two Italians, and then there are Italians that are involved. Casa Italiana is not Italian in the provincial sense of the adjective. We want to talk about everything that happens in the city, in the world, and if there is an Italian bent to it, we like to underline it in a positive way. So the presentation of this book allows us to do all these things, and for this I'm very grateful to Maria Teresa and Alessandro, and I would like to give the floor to Maria Teresa, that will also act as a moderator of this roundtable. Please welcome all our guests. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefano, for your kind presentation and for accepting to host this event. So Alessandro and I love New York City and love Italy too. And so we wanted to celebrate what's going on here in the city, and we hoped that it would be useful also to Italians. In fact, Tech in the City is the first and only book to date that tells the story of New York as a technology hub. It's a story that very few people know, and still today few New Yorkers are aware of how big the tech industry is in the city. It has been the industry that has grown the fastest during the last 10 years, and especially after the 2008 financial crisis. And in fact, today it employs around 300,000 people. If you browse the website digital.nyc, you will find over 6,000 startups in the city, and you will find 3,000 job opportunities that are available right now. Among the most famous startups in the city, you may recognize Etsy, which is going to be listed at the NASDAQ, Kickstarter, Meetup, Foursquare, for example. And besides, all the major players of Silicon Valley have established big operations in the city. For example, Google is the largest one, and Google today employs 4,000 people here in New York City, half of whom are software engineers. New York also has become the second area in America attracting investments, venture capitalists, angel investors, and so on. Last year, $4.5 billion were invested in startups in New York. And more than in Boston, and second only to California and the Silicon Valley. So our book tries to explain how come this boom happened and which are the ingredients of New York City success. And we also wanted to ask whether New York City can be a model for other cities and for other countries, including Italy. Indeed, from other cities and countries, a lot of people are coming to New York to learn more about the city. And I'm glad to tell you that Tech and the City has been adopted like a guide by them to navigate the tech scene in New York. And Alessandro and I are often asked to meet these foreign visitors and talk with them. I remember meetings with the people from Switzerland, Finland, Norway, Colombia, Israel, Germany. I mean, from all over the world. And Brian, too, meets them very often when he can. So my first question is for Brian. Brian Cohen is the chairman of the New York Angels, which is the most active group of angel investors in the country, more than in Silicon Valley. He's himself an angel investor, and one of his early investments is in Pinterest, that you may know, a startup that now has a valuation of $11 billion, right?
Billion with a B.
Billion with a
right.
B, exactly. And Brian is also an author. He wrote the book, What Every Angel Investor Wants You to Know, and inside it reveals how to get smart funding for your billion-dollar idea, right? So when we interviewed Brian for the book, he's one of the protagonists of our book that has more than 50 interviews with entrepreneurs, investors, professors in the academy, consultants, and so on. So when we interviewed Brian, he told us, quote, "Today, everyone is creating a startup to get laid on a Friday night," unquote.
I didn't think you were going to quote me directly.
And his office is actually in the meatpacking district, where a lot of scenes from Sex and the City were shot. So my first question to Brian is, in your opinion, why New York City is so sexy for entrepreneurs and investors?
It's interesting because I've never thought about romanticism as much, about the startup experience. And certainly always, by the way, I'm the only one born and raised in New York City that's sitting here. It's my home. I went to high school right down the street here. This is the air I breathe. And I'm a hopeless romantic. So the context of building companies and sort of orchestrating them in a warm and sort of cheerful way is somewhat romantic. And in the Italian context, I think there's a bit of romanticism about the way startups evolve. I believe that very, very much. New York City, and I was just asked this a couple of weeks ago by the Wall Street Journal, a similar question, why is New York such a romantic environment for starting companies? And I said, frankly, because it's a big bar scene. So I have 3 children who all started companies in New York City. And they tell me all the time that they're meeting their friends at bars all the time. They're always out. They're always socially connected. And frankly, also, women. Now, Silicon Valley is different because it's a lot of nerds and you can't walk to a bar, right? But in New York City, you're asking, I'm a behavioralist, so I'd like to know really what's happening. What are you feeling? I think there's a lot of feel to the context of being a great entrepreneur. And New York City is a feeling place. It really is. There's a sense of connection with the companies that we invest in. I like to say we hug in New York City. And it's a completely different feeling out in California, where it's an A+++ personality and a dog-eat-dog environment. And I'm watching this evolution taking place in New York, and it's going through a doldrums right now. There are some challenges, but I think it's like a rainforest. You know, it evolves, it changes, it grows. But there's definitely that sense of warmth of people wanting to help each other in a romantic kind of way.
Yeah, and talking about...
Sorry, I talked too much.
No. It's fine. Talking about women, one interesting and good piece of news from New York is that in New York, the ratio between women and men in entrepreneurs starting a startup is double the one as in the Silicon Valley and even in London and other hubs. Meaning it's still very low, but at least here 20% of entrepreneurs starting a startup are women, while in the Silicon Valley it's only 10%. Talking about an entrepreneur, Alberto Pepe. Alberto Pepe is the co-founder of Authorea and an associate research scientist at Harvard University. He got his PhD in information science from the University of California, Los Angeles, with a dissertation on scientific collaboration networks, right? He was born and raised in the winemaking town of Manduria in Puglia, southern Italy, but he left home to London for college, then worked in Geneva, Switzerland at the European Organization for Nuclear Research, right? So, Alberto, what brought you here from Italy and from Boston also?
Well, talking about sexy, because you mentioned sexy before, there's two references I want to make to sexy. First one is I moved to New York because it's clearly a sexier environment to run a company. That's clearly one thing that drove me from Boston to New York. And nothing against Boston. I run a company that, we're in science. We try and help out researchers do their research in collaboration. So Boston was actually a better place to run a company like that. But, there's something about New York that just somehow brought me here. And I was lucky because I met two sex investors and some other great investors that invested in the company. The other thing that I wanted to...
More about that later.
All right. So the actual reason is that I was doing research. I was at Harvard. I was a postdoc researcher there. I was having a great time. Boston is a great place to do research. All my friends were academics. All my friends were doing postdocs, PhDs, and that was a great environment to sort of push the sort of startup and the company that I'm working on, which is a company about science, about making science more transparent and more open. But at the same time, I missed something about having an environment, the bar scene that New York offers. There's something about that, I like to say that one of the things that we're doing with Authorea is also to bring sexy back to science, or science back to sexy, the way you want to put it. So coming to New York I was a visiting fellow at NYU in the Center for Cosmology and Particle Physics. That was a nice break from Boston, and I decided that maybe I should give New York a try, and that's when I met some investors, and I decided to leave academia for good, and that's essentially what...
Where did we meet?
We met at a bar. So...
Which bar?
So it was some sort of a mixer for entrepreneurs.
And the bar.
Yeah. So I wasn't pitching, or I wasn't even thinking of pitching, because at the time I was just a postdoc researcher, so I was doing my own research. I was starting up a company on the side, but it was more of a project. And then I show up at the bar, and I bump into Brian, and within 10 seconds he's like, what do you do? Maybe you should tell the story, but essentially it was pitch me. 40 people said they pitch me, so you just go ahead and pitch me. And I wasn't even ready for pitching. I had never done it in my life. And he was like, well, we need to talk. And then, that's how the whole thing started.
Way, I dreamed about meeting a startup guy like him. Not that kind of way. But I dreamed about being able to find. So I dreamed about finding somebody as talented and in the business that he was in. I'm a science communicator, and I have my master's in science communications. And here I'm at a bar, and you're keynoting that night.
Yeah.
That's right. That was cool. And actually it was an Italian night.
Yeah.
God, I always wanted to be Italian. I dream of being, I'm like an honorary member of Sons of Italy, so. But here he was, not even looking to pitch anyone, just kind of hanging out by the bar. And I said, so who are you? And of course, he looks like he just came out of GQ magazine, right? And I'm just having a beer, and it's a great story to tell. And I said, who are you? He says, Alberto. I go, yeah, hi, Alberto. Just imagine, I'm just at a bar drinking a Heineken. Hi, Alberto, what do you do? He says, I'm a professor. I go, okay, yeah, fine. Okay, you're a professor, right? So what are you a professor of? He goes, astrophysics. I'm going to have another drink, right? You know, I'm looking at the book in the cover, right, of this gentleman. And then I said, okay, Alberto, professor of astrophysics, where are you teaching? He goes, Harvard. I'd like spit out my beer, right? And then I said, why are you here? And he says, well, I've developed this platform that's going to transform the science community and effectively transform the world so that research can be done in a most open, transparent way. So people don't have to waste money. Researchers can collaborate together. And I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I'm pinching myself because this is what I'm looking to find. I'm looking for him. And unless you're an angel investor that's crazy, always looking, you're not really an angel investor. And then he goes up to the bar and he opens up his computer and he shows me the platform, Authorea. And that was it. It was love. Yeah. It was love.
Yeah.
You didn't have to be, because I got it.
Mm. One of the strengths
amore, sorry, it's amore.
Amore. One of the strengths of the city, indeed, is the fact that there are so many networking events, and with people coming from all different kind of industries, from a scientific world, from the fashion, from the media, and so there is plenty of occasions to meet and to interact and to exchange ideas and so on. Alessandro, first of all, thank you again for convincing me and for introducing me to this very exciting world of startups in New York. For people who don't know Alessandro, Alessandro has been living here for almost 40 years now. 40 years. Yeah, since his dad, Il Serino Piol, came to the US to run Olivetti's operation in North America. Il Serino Piol is the veteran of venture capital in Italy, very successful investors, first in Tiscali and most recently in Yux, the fashion platform. But when his dad went back to Milan, to Italy, Alessandro decided to stay here. Studied engineering at Columbia, got his master also at Columbia, then an MBA at Harvard, and then he continued his American adventure on his own, becoming a very successful venture capitalist. So, Alessandro, you travel often from the US to Italy. You have a lot of, you have business also in Italy. Can you make a comparison between the two countries and tell us, in your opinion, what is still missing in Italy compared to here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say something about writing the book with Maria Teresa, which was quite an experience. It's one of those things where the destination is better than the journey.
Shall I take it as a compliment?
Absolutely. Maria Teresa is first of all, it was a labor of love for both of us. But I have to say that if it wasn't for Maria Teresa, I would still be there writing. I mean, she's a very disciplined author. So thank you for moving the project forward. The difference between Italy.
So the ingredients of the success here and what's missing in Italy.
Well, you know, it's hard to draw those types of comparisons because every place is different. I think Silicon Valley is different from New York, is different from Boston. You know, every place has its own flavor. The advantage of the United States is that this entrepreneurial revolution has been going on for many years. If you look at Silicon Valley, it's really started in the 40s and 50s, and so it did in Boston. New York has really been active for the past 20 years, and it's already about a third of what Silicon Valley is today. So has been making very, very good progress. But it's one of those things that takes generations of entrepreneurs to develop, right? So, you know, in New York, we're already at the second, third generation of entrepreneurs that are building companies, being successful, then making money, reinvesting in new companies. And that's how the cycle starts, because you have some success stories, you can point to. You have examples of success. It's really what drives new entrepreneurs to come out and try new things. The United States is a special country also because there is no. In many ways, it's fearless, right? People here are fearless, would do almost anything. So entrepreneurs just go out there and try to build big companies. They're not afraid to fail, which is really a cultural thing, and it's something that is probably still lacking in Europe, and especially in Italy, where failing is seen as a scar. So if you fail, it's seen as a very, very bad thing. It's a sort of you have a stigma. It's harder to recover. I think it's changed a little bit, but it's sort of something that's sort of ingrained in the mentality of in Italy and in many parts of Europe, and that's a big advantage. But again, it's a cultural thing that changes over time, and I hope that will change even faster going forward. The other ingredients are really, I think, things that you would look for here as well. I mean, if you go to a place where there are not a lot of entrepreneurs or startups, I mean, you could go to any city in the U.S. I mean, today you're starting to see new ecosystems grow up and being formed. What does it take to start those? I mean, you need first ingredient is entrepreneurs. You need talent, right? You need also guidance. You need mentorship. You need education, right? So the best entrepreneur ecosystems have always were always started around some big universities. So Boston with MIT, California with Stanford. Now, New York has some big universities in the city. If you look at other places as well, whether you go to LA or to Denver or to Austin, there are always big, Michigan, Ann Arbor. There are always big universities that are the center of these. They generate the ideas, the scientific ideas. And a lot of venture capital is really after all around technology. Whether it's information technology or healthcare technologies, there's always a component that's technological. So things get built around that. So being around the center of expertise or university is important. In Europe, you have the same thing. You have the talent. The interesting thing is that if you go to Italy, I spent a lot of time going around, and the past couple of years I spent a lot of time speaking at both with Teresa and also by myself, speaking at universities around the country, and the talent is there. The young people, students, scientists, researchers, just like Alberto. I mean, Alberto was educated outside the country, but you find people like him in Italy. They're there. They have the ideas, okay? But then there is no mentorship system where you can teach these people how to go from having an idea to being an entrepreneur, which is something that takes some skill. And you can't reinvent the wheel every time, but it's really not necessary. You should have really more people that act as mentors and so on. And then you go into the other issues, which is really talent pools, which has to do with money. Okay, so in Italy there are actually people that make angel investments, but then there is nothing beyond that. So it's reasonably easy to find startup money, but then when you go beyond that, you need to get growth money. There's nothing. So it's really pointless. So I tell everybody that's starting companies in Italy, I say, look, you can start the company in Italy, you can have a development team there, but you have to move out.
And then you have to come
to New York
grow,
or go to London or somewhere else.
Yeah. Talking about culture again, I'm going to quote another another thing that Brian said. We asked Brian in the book, what was the spark that got technology started in New York? And Brian answered, quote, I cannot think of a specific company. I cannot think of a specific individual. I would say it's a sense of camaraderie that started the tech community in New York. I've never seen more trust. If somebody told me that there are a lot of people with a lot of money here and that they all work together and trust each other, I would never have believed it. When there is so much money to be made, you cannot imagine that there are enough people out there to trust each other. But New York City has this trust. Everybody is ready to listen, unquote. So in your opinion, Brian, is the cultural component even more important than money, regulation, taxes, and so on?
Oh, absolutely. So when I think about the early days, 35, 40 years ago, when the early tech community started, and everything old is new again. So that was, the early days of the computer industry. And there were those of us who said, we're alone here, right? It's just us. And we would meet in little places, and you started the New Media Association.
20 years ago.
You're right, 20 years ago. And so there was just a few of us that all said, we're all in this together. And everybody looked around the table and said, I like you. I like you. And that feeling, that cultural sense of being together was wonderful. And it hasn't changed. And it's been very protective. So when, it's kind of like Hollywood back in the 20s, a plane would arrive, somebody would get off the plane, they have no money, just a dream. And New York is just like that. It's filled with a lot of those kinds of romantic dreams. And then you get to people like me and Alessandro, and there's many of us who feel the same way, and we're dreamers too, right? We're sort of impractical in that context as venture capitalists, because VCs tend to sort of say, what do you got? Where is it? It's hard, you can knock on it, it's something strong, you can hold on to it. But we're kind of dreamers, and we sort of fit that mold. And some of us, like myself, have built businesses here. There's a lot of venture capitalists who have never built businesses, but a lot of them in New York have. They've built financial organizations and so on. The only difference between us and just as a point in Silicon Valley is we haven't had any huge exits yet, so that the people who make the money can make it rain more. And that's just going to take time to do. But the sense of the early stage romanticism, I can't get away from that word. We didn't have wine yet, did we? No, we didn't have any wine yet. But that feeling of collaboration, that feeling of wanting to work together, nobody in New York gets an award who's a member of the startup community. It's a fascinating thing because no one thinks that they deserve it. They always think the other person does. It's really amazing. We were going to give an award to somebody and they said, no. I stand on the shoulders and I hold the hands of everybody else around me. And it's really remarkable. And as I said, New York, really? That's the way it is? But it really is. It's really special.
Yeah, some Italian organizations tend to have an inflation of awards. Let's put it this way. Okay, Alberto. Alessandro earlier mentioned universities and research. So you were a researcher, now an entrepreneur. How important is the way research is organized within universities and the relationship between research and entrepreneurship? In your experience here and also from what you hear from your colleagues still in Italy?
Well, I cannot really speak too much for people in Italy because I left Italy when I was 19 and I actually ended up studying abroad for 15, 20 years. I'm actually that old. But I will say that for me it was a big risk to leave academia and start a company. I like to say that there's a couple of aspects, a couple of features and traits of when I was a kid, which is curiosity is one, and the other one is risk. I was very curious, and then I would get in trouble. I would risk, and I would get in trouble. And in a way, curiosity is the one thing that made me an academic, because of course, scientific research and academia is all about being curious, and trying to push the boundaries of what's known, and going into the unknown in a way. And then switching to becoming an entrepreneur is the component of risk. And hopefully I won't get in trouble. So but the whole point is that I did have to take a big risk leaving academia. I had a postdoc at Harvard, and I was extremely happy with the work I was doing with my collaborators. And essentially I had to decide that I wanted to raise money for the company. That I was so passionate about it that I had to quit my postdoc and try and raise money on the side. and do something entirely different. It was a risk because even my parents were like, hang on a second, you're at Harvard, why don't you just like carry on with your, you know? And then for like a few months while we were raising, we were going through the actual fundraise, which took a while, I was essentially unemployed. I didn't have health insurance. I didn't really have a visa status. Probably you don't know this stuff, but it happened. And eventually, when we closed the round, I was relieved, and my parents were happy that I did it. But yes, there was clearly a clear component of risk, and I can say that there's a few things that I've learned along the process, and I'm learning every day. I was talking to Brian before, and he said, "Do you realize that we gave you all this money, and you've never run a business before? Like, that's weird, right?" And so I'm learning every day. This is a very extremely, yeah. It's an extremely, it's a learning process. I'm learning a number of new things, but there's probably one component, one thing that they don't teach you in school, that they don't teach you during the PhD, and it's how to market and sell anything. So essentially, I think it's, people don't really talk about this. PhD gives you a lot of analytical skills. It gives you a lot of, makes you a problem solver. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really teach you how to sell and market yourself and your research. So scientists are notoriously really bad at marketing and selling, and that's one thing that I had to learn the hard way. Now, for the last part of your question, what about the Italian landscape? All I can say is that our company is about scientific research, and I'm happy to say that Italy is actually at the forefront in certain academic fields. For example, particle physics, astrophysics. One of the reasons that I ended up doing astrophysics is because I even had the passion. I would watch the news on TV, and there's a thing that they do after the news called Leonardo. I don't know if all the Italians probably know about that. That's fantastic. They talk about research that actually is being done by Italians in Italy and all around the world. And that's one of the things that got me, interested in the idea of, doing research and studying physics. The fact that we have a great, scientific heritage, starting from Galileo, which by the way is one of the symbols that we use even for Authorea to push for open science. And then Leonardo and so many people that worked in physics and astronomy. That's a great thing that in a way pushed me to becoming an academic. So all I can say is that the people that I interact with that are still in academia in Italy are fantastic people. There's a lot of talent in science, and I think that it's a lot harder for an Italian, possibly, that's my guess, to actually take the step and going from academia to becoming an entrepreneur for some of the reasons that Alessandro mentioned. It's a lot easier to just stick in your in your place and keep doing academic work, and you end up being a postdoc for 20 years. Sometimes it does happen. It's that bad.
Yeah. However, in Italy things are changing too. Eppur si muove. Governo Monti 3 governments ago passed a law about startups, and I'm wondering if Alessandro can tell us something about if it's easier right now to start a new company in Italy, according to what you've heard from your colleagues and other people in Italy, or not.
Well, I think they were trying to eliminate some of the red tape that is involved in actually setting up a company and a structure and so on. There is a usual a reject process that goes on by the incumbents, right? So they're trying to get rid of notary publics and other people that are sort of in the process. They make money by doing silly things, which they cost like $100 a year. They cost $10,000 in Italy. So it's a
notary and all that stuff.
No, it's just silly. So some of those rules I put in place, I think, are very useful, steps in the right direction. I know they've had the impact. I mean, at the end, those are things that allow you to do the simple stuff faster, right? Just like you do many other parts of the world. But I think structurally you need more. You need to have I guess to some extent you need to encourage entrepreneurship in different ways. So you need to bring the talent to Italy to do mentorship and to educate people in how you start companies. And also you need the capital, the later stage capital. And there are things in process with the government now that have to do with setting up funds of funds to invest in funds that would provide this growth capital. And so there is a number of activities in process. I think it's something that would take time. Eventually, hopefully, we will get there. But we're still in, still in high C, right?
Okay.
So.
Going back for a second to the relationship between universities and the industry. In New York City, there is a big, huge project just started going on, Cornell New York Tech. The new campus on Roosevelt Island, and Brian is involved in that. It was an idea launched by the Bloomberg administration, and according to the previous administration, it should generate 600 startups in the coming 30 years, along with 30,000 jobs. At least this is the estimate. Interesting enough, the city gave away the land on which the campus is built and the infrastructures, but the $2 billion necessary to build the campus are being raised by private people. So, Brian, can you tell us a little more about the project and the impact on the future of New York City?
So, we've made mention of MIT and Boston. Stanford University, of course, is a nucleus in Silicon Valley. There's been no real engineering school that has produced startups in New York, although my associate here, went and got an engineering degree at Columbia. Columbia has not produced a lot of great engineering startups as of yet, but I know they will soon, right? So NYU has not either. And Bloomberg realized that we needed software engineers. Everybody has a startup needs a software engineer. So you got to build it. And he decided he was going to make a bold step and build it from scratch. So he went to Israel. He's got tight relationships there at the time, Bloomberg, at the Technion, one of the top 3, I guess, engineering schools in Startup Nation. You've all heard of that book, in Israel. And then solicited, bids from universities to come to New York and collaborate. Politics being as it may, Columbia, dropped out, NYU dropped out for a variety of reasons. Cornell stepped up, and so it was born. Cornell Technion campus on Roosevelt Island. Now, they have Google supporting a lot of the initial startup at the Google headquarters here prior to them getting going. It's hard to start a university from scratch. Bloomberg certainly pulled a lot of strings to make sure things happened faster. He had the ability to do it. But they're starting at such a high level. They're not just starting, well, let's take baby steps. They're starting with big ideas, huge campus development, buildings, research, bringing in international companies, big brands to get it going. I'm very good friends with the director. It's been obviously a challenge to get it going. They've broken ground. They expect to at least have a first class, I think, in another 2 years, at least a real first class coming out of Roosevelt Island. They have an initial class coming out of the Google headquarters here in New York. But we mentor some of their early overachievers, and these students are really overachievers. Multiple PhDs, extraordinary. But they're not entrepreneurs. And so we're beginning to give them the skill sets through the New York Angels, in which we're mentoring a lot of these PhD students to get things going. But it is a work in progress. So there's a great vision, we have a great deal of hope, but you just can't say poof and it will happen. There's a lot of the things that Alessandro is talking about, that sort of alchemy, maybe the AU part of alchemy that you use in your logo. But it is and I said this in a presentation the other day with my esteemed colleague here. It's a petri dish. We're not really sure how it's going to evolve, but there's a lot of people playing with it. And it looks like it's going in the right direction right now. And it should work. But the biggest question, and it's a strange one, and it comes back to the issue of the bar scene, is can you create another hub, another entrepreneur hub, where this magic, whatever you want to describe it, happens on that little island across the way? Will people want to be there? Will people want to hang there? Will people want to be in a position to create things? Not really sure yet, but a lot of money is betting on it.
Thank you. So it was the Bloomberg administration that which launched that. Now we have de Blasio in charge, and among other things, he wants to improve the broadband connection to the internet in the city. Well, Alessandro, have you perceived any difference in the tech community in New York City after the new administration started? And in your opinion, how important is the role of local government in fostering an entrepreneurial community?
Well, fortunately, I have not seen any changes yet. I mean, the expectation was there would be changes for the worse. And you know, that hasn't really happened. I think the administration understood pretty quickly that a lot of good things have been started. And I don't know if Brian has a different opinion on this, but I haven't really seen. Okay, so I personally have not noticed, but Brian has. And so they didn't get into the way of some of the major things that Bloomberg had put in place. Also, Bloomberg was smart enough to put things in place that take decades to develop and very hard to pull the plug on. I think there are things a lot of things need to be improved. Broadband is one of them. There's just not enough high quality services available in the city. There is not enough competition, and that's when you're in a monopolistic type of situation, it's hard for the incumbents to provide better service. So that's one problem. And what else were you asking?
How important, in your opinion, is the role of local government in fostering an entrepreneurial?
Well, I don't think the government is important to start a community. In some cases, and I think Bloomberg has shown that, the government can be useful in terms of accelerating things. So all these initiatives where you have local governments trying to start a technology ecosystem, I think they're bound to failure. I mean, if you don't have the entrepreneurs and the talent, I mean, there is nothing the government can do to do something like that. So, but it can be useful at some point by putting some of the right maybe incentives in place or things that can accelerate the development, but not to start it.
Yeah, I think we want to know Brian's opinion, right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, Michael Bloomberg was a technologist, so it just came natural to him to think in that kind of context. That when we met with him, and we would party with him at Gracie Mansion, he'd have us all get together. And he would put on Warby glasses. He would do all the silly things. But he was a part of a community that he was the cheerleader for. We don't have that anymore. And so, yeah, I mean, you could say a cheerleader is useful, but he also greased the skid, so to speak, by creating New York City Economic Development Corporation with some of his extraordinary wealth. And he hired people that were not government people. Okay? You know what I'm talking about, right? He hired extraordinary people to do extraordinary big thinking. And he funded many of the accelerators in New York City government. He got, even General Assembly or some of the current, accelerators and incubators in New York City going. So there was still so much to do. And not just in New York City, but in the outer boroughs of New York City. We tend to weirdly think about the startup community in New York as Manhattan, but there's this richness of culture and of immigrants in Queens that's being built out now, and in the Bronx. And it will feed and tie into a nucleus of what's been going on in the city. He was aware of all of that. De Blasio is blasé. I mean, I've gotten into trouble in a whole host of meetings I've had with his team that they're not technologists. I can't fault them for it. They don't think the way we do. So what he hasn't done is keep the momentum going, which is unfortunate. So staying in place when you're supposed to grow is not good. But he's trying, but his emphasis isn't on startups and spending money on startups. His emphasis is where and how he got elected, getting lower class jobs, opportunity for people to work. And that is not about the money that we spend in the millions of dollars on highly educated, startups. And so it's important what he's doing, but there's no cheerleader anymore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, however, one good thing that Mr. de Blasio did was to appoint an Italian, Gianluca Galletto, to be the person responsible for international relationships at the New York City Economic Development Corporation.
Well, that was a program that was started by Bloomberg called The World to NYC.
Yeah. And in fact, Gianluca unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because he's in Milan at the Salone del Mobile to publicize this program which wants to attract even more talent from abroad to New York.
It's an extraordinary program. So last night I was at a Russian embassy talking to Russian startups coming to America. Israel is here every week. They're constantly. I think it's 15% of the startups in New York City started in Israel. It's an enormous number. Tonight I'm going to a German startup thing. Friday I'm going to a Korean one. So all these international organizations are coming to feast in New York City and to figure out what we can help them with. It's not easy. It's kind of fun to do it, but it's not as practical as they think in terms of actually the end result being positive. But they have to keep trying.
Yeah. So we have a chapter in the book talking about the appeal of New York to foreign entrepreneurs. And one of the entrepreneurs we interviewed was from Bosnia, I thought, for Slovenia, I don't remember. And he told us that he was surprised that after a few weeks he was here, he got an email from the New York City Economic Development Corporation saying, hello, how are you doing? What can we do for you? Shall we meet for a coffee? What do you need? Alberto, did you have the same experience? What was your relationship with the administration?
Well, I actually don't have much experience with the administration in general. All I can talk about is the, my experience with the New York community in general. I've talked to, after I met Brian was the key to, opening a lot of doors in the investor community, both in the angel side of things and in the venture capital side of the spectrum. And I have to say that everybody was happy to talk to me. So, everybody was friendly. I probably met in 4 months something like 50 different investors. So it was like a constant meeting new people and, refining my slide deck for pitching and refining the ideas and the numbers. I was being very conservative about, like projections and things like that, like most scientists. All I can say is that I found a very friendly environment. From an administration point of view, I cannot really say much. To be honest, I'm not very I cannot really chime in with anything political. All I have to say.
No. I didn't want to any political opinion.
It was
talking
funny
about
to see Brian, criticize an Italian mayor in front of all these Italians here. Like I was like, whoa.
Feeling that right now.
Listen, Brian, you mentioned that you meet so many startups from all over the world, from Korea, Russia, Israel, and from Italy, because you have attended at least a couple of, I think, of presentations from Italian startups.
Many.
So how do how Italian startups coming here compete with startups from other countries? Which are the strengths or the weak points? How do you see them? compared to the others? If you see any difference.
Well, at least I'll reference, the time that we met. There was a program put together by a friend of mine, and he has a current one going on right now with a bunch of Italians that are here. Brian Frumberg.
Yeah, I know.
Right. I was supposed to go to it last night and tonight. Wow, I have 2 Italian events to go to in one night. That's pretty cool, right? Right. I think for the most part, the Italian startups that I met were trying too hard. They weren't leveraging, at least maybe it's stereotypical, their strengths of design, because everything is designed today. Everything. When you think about Apple, you think about Google, you think about everything that you see, touch, and feel today, it's all about design. So the sensibility of design was strangely absent in a lot of the conversations that I had with a lot of the Italian startups. And I found that fascinating, because maybe it isn't part of your DNA. Maybe, I'm expecting too much, that design should be front and center, and to the extent that that's what we look at as the interface between us and technology more than ever before. So I was surprised that they weren't using design. They weren't capitalizing on a lot of their strengths. I don't think you could say there's anything that's a lot different about their attitudes. I think every one of these startups that we see from all these countries, do their best to find a developer, do their best to get good business sense, do their best to understand their markets. And that's the other thing about New York, at least. New York is the customer. The difference between Silicon Valley and here is that the customer is here. New York City, between Washington and Boston, using New York as the hub, is something like more than 50% of your customer base is here. So that's it. I can't think of anything else other than they need to think about more design.
Okay, good suggestion. Talking about your Italian roots, Manduria and Puglia, have you ever thought of going back to Italy, or at least to start also?
Every day.
No, I mean, because there are young people choosing to stay there. I recently interviewed a couple of young guys from Monopoly. They built a company that makes aircrafts, small, very light aircraft. And they were so proud of being able to establish the company over there. And on the other hand, also there are a lot of Italians that are adopting a double model, having a base here, but also having operations in Italy.
So absolutely. I mean, personally, I would love to go back to Italy, and I will go back to Italy. I just don't know when exactly, but we don't have the resources right now to have a sort of a double-sided operations, but probably at some point soon, and we would love to hire and bring more resources that come from Italy. Just to give you an example, one of the people that are one of the very early people involved in the company. He's an astrophysicist, and he's Italian, and he's part of the board as well, Matteo. So he's our foot in academia, and so we love to employ in general Italians and Europeans overall. So as just going back to your question, I think it's very doable to have operations in Italy and create some sort of like double-sided thing where we can sort of work in Italy and in the US. One great thing, as I mentioned before, is that Italy is also very much ripe for scientific innovation. As I said, it's one of the things that make me proud every day, is that we have not just the history but also a very active scientific community, from physics to astrophysics to biophysics, and that's a great thing. We would actually look and find talent very easily. So also I'm a big fan of Puglia, so I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to bring back some of the things that Puglia gave me, just taking it back to where it belongs.
Yeah, right. And so from the point of view of investors, now the dollar is stronger, and also the Renzi government has started some reforms. Do you think, Alessandro, that Italy has more appeal now to American investors? including venture capitalists, angel investors, and so on?
No. No, I think it's the problem is not as much Italy in this case. It's really investing in early stage companies abroad. I mean, people don't like to do that. If you invest in very early stage companies, as Brian can tell you, everybody can tell you, is you want to have them local. So you want to invest in teams and companies that are sort of, you can spend time with, because part of what we do as early stage investors is really spend time with the companies, try to help the entrepreneurs, help them open doors, strategic issues, customers, you name it, everything. It's a sort of a teamwork. If you're not close, it's very hard to do. So I think that is a challenge in investing in every foreign company. That's why the model that's a better model for foreign investors is the one where you say, okay, so you guys are in Italy, you can keep maybe your development team there, but you have to establish your headquarters in New York so we can work with you, and you can manage the development team remotely, because you can get great talent at low cost in Europe, in Italy especially. I mean, you can get better lower cost in Italy than in Ukraine or something, right? So it's today. So that model works, and it's a model that was pioneered by Israel, where they did a fantastic job at developing companies there and then bringing them here pretty quickly. And the reason why they did that, because their market is 50 million people, and it's not very big. Italy is a larger market, but there is not enough entrepreneurial mentality to develop things. So that's a reason why, if you look at the European market, it's a big market, but it's not homogeneous. So it really makes a lot of sense if you have competitive technologies that are applicable across borders to come here and develop the company here. And I think that's a model that people will look for, and especially early stage companies, you want to have people local.
However, Brian was mentioning earlier that he's going to Europe to look for opportunities, so you're more optimistic about?
Well, so I've been invited to an ambassadorial meeting in 2 weeks with a lot of ambassadors, trying to understand what it is that is causing America to create and what is stopping Europe not to do so until themselves. And I was just sharing this with Alessandro. I was fascinated by this. The gentleman I'm having dinner with tonight, finance minister of Germany, which I have to sneak out of here to head up to Colombia tonight to do this, said something really interesting to me. He said, if you're an entrepreneur in Europe and you succeed, you're looked down on. That you must have done something to hurt someone to have actually become successful. I almost spit up my soup. I said, wow. He said, yeah, if you're successful in Europe, you've done something to hurt someone. And I said, I don't know how you, excuse me?
You've stolen.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't want to use that word, but you used it. But it was bad. So even the sense of not starting something because failure is a scar, succeeding is a worse scar. That really, it blew my mind. Hadn't thought about that. Right? So I'm going over there to try and remove the scabs, to tell them that it's okay. But I'm going to do my best to try and open up that conversation with people. But as he went on further, he said our socialist mentality there is prohibitive against, the entrepreneur community thriving, because there'll be too many people who'll be jealous, who want what others have, and yell at them and call them names. So I'm going to do my best. I've got 2 conferences I'm attending, this ambassadorial conference in Brussels, and then the European Business Angel Network in Eindhoven in 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks after that, I told you I'm going to Korea, and they're like, oh, we need more Samsung. We got to build, But Europe, I'm going to keynote and yell at them. I don't know if that's going to do any good.
Okay, I could go on and on asking questions, but I think it's time to open to your questions. So, who has the first question from the audience? Berardo Paradiso.
2 questions. The first question you're talking about, Brian, since you are the New York-based
Oh, boy. You really want to know? So the New York Angels, I'll just use this as a model. We have funded 110 companies. Average amount, $500,000. Some number, and then follow-on money. Because as Alessandro said, you need more money, right? You get startup capital, then you need growth capital. So over $110 million also has gone in. So about $1 million total to some extent per company. And now it's getting less, by the way. I just want to point this out. Because angel investors, so who are we, right? Who are these people who fund these early stage companies? We're just rich enough people defined by the US government through the Securities Exchange Commission to have $200,000 a year and $1 million in assets. And then we could do this thing called angel investing legally. Because other than that, friends and family who don't have to subscribe to it can't be angels, at least not by the SEC standards. So it's kind of weird. 90% of all the money, just want to educate you, 90% of all the money that goes into startups, that between friends and family and a Series A when the venture firms start thinking more seriously about risk, is funded by individual rich enough people called angel investors. It's kind of weird. And they're not professionals at it. We're amateurs. Most are amateurs. And they do it sort of, kind of, the best they can, which is unfortunate. Because, getting to your next question, because it's a slippery slope, he's adorable, he's smart, it sounds like a good idea. What is it again? Most angel investors are like that. They really don't do the due diligence that reaches a reasonably qualified conclusion that there's some there. The numbers of success, all right, here's the dirty little secret. So I've been doing this for decades. I don't know very many angel investors who have ever made money. Ever. Money over money. There may be a success like he's going to be. He's going to be a wild success. But very few angels ever make money. It's a hit business. So when you think about Silicon Valley, billion-dollar exits, billion-dollar success stories, all these unicorns, as you've heard them, billion-dollar-plus companies, to make money for an angel investor, how do we make money? They go public, which of course is infinitesimal. 1.3% of companies funded by VCs go public. And if they don't go public, how do we make money? The company is sold. It's bought by another company. The average purchase is about $100 million, which is not nearly enough based upon the models of the venture capital firms to actually make money for their LPs. So it's a very scary proposition when you open it up to fact, which I've done. But most of us as angel investors professionally are getting better at it, at least the ones that are sticking to it and looking hard to find brilliant entrepreneurs like this gentleman here, because that's what we do. And we love that risk, and we love it because it's fun too. But it shouldn't just be fun. It should be about a smart money investment in a smart business. And unfortunately, that does not happen as often as it should. So it's high risk, big gamble, and the VCs are moving further and further. So you read the stories about venture firms and money being poured in. Oh, it's a Disneyland of money opportunities. Except most of the venture capital money is going towards the latter rounds when the risk has already been diminished, not at the early rounds. And it's a terrible thing not to have people who are willing to take those risks.
Next question.
Sorry. Are you learning? All right. Interactive.
Francesca.
To both of you, how early on do you try and get equity in a company that you're investing in? How early on do you try to convince the person to get equity?
So how early in the life of the company with investors trying to get equity? Are you asking make a difference between equity and convertible loans or
Say when you can get actual stock of ownership of the company.
well, it usually happens. I mean, it happens when you invest in the company. So it happens almost right away. You know, the typical cycle is, you know, a entrepreneur starts a company, maybe gets some money from friends and family. They usually invest the money as a loan, right? And then when the angels step in, if you talk to somebody like Brian, I'll tell you that, you know, it has to be, you know, what they call a priced round. So it's actually equity that has you know, a price per share and a very well defined type of structure. There are some investors that invest in what they call convertible loans, which are things that convert at the next when actual money is more money is raised, so they convert at a certain price. But you know, you are going to have ownership basically immediately. I mean, whenever the company raises money from serious investors, let's say.
Yeah, that's another point. So there's a logic to this, so you will understand. We're partners, right? So there are words like get, like how much do you get, right? We didn't get anything. He sold shares in his company at a practical valuation that we reached in a collaborative way, and it's not money raising. Very important. It's investor raising. He has Alessandro and I, plus a lot of other people who care deeply about him, care about his business and how we can help him. That's a big difference. So it isn't about getting. It's really about investing our time, our money, into the success of that company. I just want to point that out. Very important to note.
Okay.
You want a mic?
No problem. I am part of the founding team of a company that is based in Colombia Startup Lab, and so I guess like my question probably would be for Alessandro. And in your previous experience, if you had to identify like an element of success and the failure of person maybe then leader, what would it be?
If I had to identify elements of success and failure? Okay, so I've been in venture capital for 20 years, and in that period I've invested in everything from really early stage companies to later stage companies. So I've had the full flavor of things. And I think it boils down to one thing, let's say two things, okay? Most often, almost every time, companies that fail is because of poor management. So that's the number one thing. It always comes down to that. The second big factor is that we've noticed is that companies fail or have a really hard time when they miss the market. Some companies get to market are too early for the market. You know, a lot of the companies that blew up in 2000 were not, didn't blow up necessarily because they had bad ideas. They blew up because there was no market. It was way ahead of what the market could support, and they were raising tons of money and spending them freely without having a market where they could get revenues. So that's a problem. And sometimes you have companies that are too late to market, so they don't do a good job at understanding what the competition is, and they get to a point where it's impossible to sort of penetrate the market in a way that will make them successful. But those are the two big issues. By the way, good job at the Columbia lab.
Columbia has a great startup community.
Yeah.
Really tremendous. Cartagena, friends of mine who were there, loving it.
So it's for both of you. Basically, as you're investing very early stage, and maybe after that you give some follow-up money. Usually, my question is, in how many stages can you invest, or because at some point they're going to get too big for you to commit, and if you cannot commit to them, then how much do you get diluted by like the company successful?
Well, there's a lot of questions in it to get unpackaged. So when a company says they want to start raising money, it's like stairs, right? First, friends, family, and fools. You've heard that, right? Then the next stage is angel investors who try and be as intelligent about asking good questions. We do our best. And then venture capital after that, reasonable. And then now private equity money is coming in later. So generally speaking, these get technical a little bit. When angel investors come in, we're early. We're early seed, we're early stage. And we formalize a functional term sheet that describes how much we are buying, right? And how much, to that extent, how long it's going to last. So we try and give enough money, invest enough money that the company has a runway, 12, 16, 18 months. It really depends. And then after that, the next round of financing comes, and we'll get diluted. If we have a term sheet that says we have pro rata rights, which is in my book on angel investing, I said, love the ones who love you first. We want the right, since we took the biggest risk, to invest again, right? You're doing well, you took our money, you invested our money, and you're doing well, we want that right. So then we won't get diluted by that second round if we take that round. But by the time it goes to a lot more money, to not get diluted is, you got to put in a lot more money, right? You really do. But the venture firms don't want you to put in any more money because their business model is to buy as much as they can. So angel investors historically were erased by the venture firms because they found ways to dilute us out so much. Another tragic, but it doesn't happen much now anymore, because they're realizing that professional angel investors are there first to tee the company up professionally so that they can actually invest. So dilution is just a natural part, but I got to tell you, diluting out of an $11 billion firm is not a bad thing.
Okay, maybe you can go on later because it's getting too technical. But,
I wanted
so,
to answer your question.
Solid question. So why do you think the ratio of female to male entrepreneur ventures or activities, why is the ratio 20%? Why is it so low? Is it that fewer females are approaching you, or a female particle physicist is not as attractive as
so the question is about how come so few entrepreneurs are women in tech industry, but also in some scientific field, right, Alberto? Can you?
Yeah. Oh no. I mean,
No.
you meet.
Yeah, I bet.
I'm
Alberto, I'm giving you
genderless. I don't really care who. I don't care, what gender it is. If
Are you
it.
being approached by female?
At the bar.
Am I being approached? All right. The answer to that isn't so.
What about those of us that don't go to bars?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Am I left completely out of this?
It is true that most of the tech community is driven by, STEM, right? We all know STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, or whatever. And there's not enough women coming out of those fields.
Yeah.
It's a natural occurrence.
Yeah. Can I tell you some good news about here, but also about Italy in a way? Here, Girls Who Code has been started. It's a great program. It was started by a friend of Alessandro.
Reshma
Yeah.
Sojani.
Tell the name.
Reshma Sojani.
Okay, so she started 2 or 3 years ago, this summer program for young ladies in between I think 13 and 16 years old, and so they go and they learn how to code. And now it's become so successful that it has spread all over America, and it was imported last year also in Italy, to Rome. In Rome they had the first Girls Who Code program in October, and I know that they will do it again this summer. So the problem is to encourage girls to study sciences and technology stuff. I see Brian, who is without prosecco, without wine.
Oh, by the way, I didn't say anything bad about Blasio. I just said he's not. He's waiting for you. There you go. He's like 6'5", so I'm a little nervous about that. But I do have to go.
You have to go. Should we go on for
Yeah, we can go out.
Yeah, if we, okay. So thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure having you.
Brian is a hugger. To finish up on the question you asked, basically there are not enough women in business in general, right? So there are not enough women on boards, there are not enough women in management, there are not enough women venture capitalists, there are not enough women entrepreneurs. I think that takes time to change, and it's changing. If you look for venture capital entrepreneurship in general, many of the talents you need come from a STEM education, right? So in science and technology, and things are changing. I mean, I went to Columbia Engineering School, and when I went to school many moons ago, I think my class was about 10% women. This year, Columbia Engineering School, the class is 45% women. Okay, so it's big movement, and the same is true at Stanford. Similar numbers you see at Harvard. So it's changing. It started from there. It's going to take time, but things. I think people are much more aware of this problem, and it's not enough. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, from an investor perspective, the only thing you can do is be gender and sort of diverse, gender neutral, and be make sure that you it's really has to be do with diversity, not only gender. So you have to be neutral on all aspects, right? Race and gender and so on. So. And we try to do that. I mean, I certainly try to do that. I know people like Brian are trying to do that. Not everybody is as maybe focused on that. And there have been some examples in Silicon Valley, and a lot of press has come out recently about certain situations that have happened. I think again, it's an issue that eventually will go away, but it's going to take time.
So can I just make one more comment about that? I want to say that for, in my case, it was extremely important that both myself and my co-founder, we were technical. We were people who, we were coding, and if we weren't, developers, actually we're not even great developers, but we're scientists, so as you know, I mean, most people that do science know how to code. And that allowed us to essentially get started on the platform right away, My co-founder Nathan, a week after we talked about the idea, was like, hey, I already have a repository, the code is there, let's play with it. And we started developing. So for us, it was fundamental that we did not outsource any coding. We did everything from the start, just me and him. And yes, some things weren't great. Brian was complaining about design. I'm Italian, I care deeply about design, but I'm not a great designer, and that's why it was probably showing some of the companies that Brian was talking to. But it was so crucial and essential that we had that that skill set, and we started things ourselves, from scratch, in a garage or in a bedroom sort of thing. Now, what happens is that I think that the change needs to happen not so much in the tech community, but it has to happen in science, because we're talking about STEM. And really what needs to change is like more women in science before anything else, because eventually, science sort of, drives technology. And I think that, as a matter of fact, I'm a big fan of, pushing the, the paradigm of like more women in science, interested in science in general, and that will drive more, women in technology, and you will get more women entrepreneurs come and talk to you, I think. That's my take.
Thank you. Other questions?
You guys analyze the New York tech scene. Do you see a difference between the New York ecosystem and the Silicon Valley ecosystem?
Yes. Next question.
Yeah, Alessandro said already something about it earlier.
Well, I mean, very briefly, I think the Silicon Valley is all about technology. Okay, so technology is well ingrained into the culture and mentality of Silicon Valley people, and if you hang out in Silicon Valley, you'll hear everybody talking about technology because that's all there is. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not that much. And New York is it's a much broader cultural environment than Silicon Valley is. And I think it attracts different types of people, and it attracts different types of technologies and different types of companies. It's more, to say very superficially, because it's not totally true, New York is more about applications of technology, while Silicon Valley is more about fundamental technologies. And New York also has the advantage of having many customers here. So about 52 of the Fortune 500 companies that are located headquarters in New York. And that's because of the way that today technology is developed, software especially. It's become much more practical for people to start companies all over the place, because the cost of software development has gone down by a factor of 50 in the past 15 years. And so now, while you used to spend like $5 million to start a company in 1999, now you spend $100,000 to do the same stuff, and that allows people to be everywhere.
And also here, technology has been applied to all the industries, and this is an opportunity for women, going back to the women issue. For example, fashion has been changed here in the city. Guild Group, which is a website that does flash sales online, was created by two women, right, who were coming from the fashion industry. And also there is Birchbox, I think, which is in the beauty, again founded by women.
But in New York, there is a group of angel investors called Golden Seed, and who only invest in companies founded by women. Okay, so there is one. It's been pretty successful. It has invested in I don't know how many, but quite a few companies.
There's Golden Seeds. There is Astia. Golden Seeds, Astia also is another one.
So I do think that there is a place for women in this. And the other part is to this, in my mind, is we need to look at much further than even the science. There is a profound difference between men and women in terms of how our DNA is structured, and the risk-taking is much more in the DNA of men than of women. It will change and it's evolving, but it is still basically different. And obviously then education goes with it. You said it for your Italian parents who were very afraid. Imagine if you were a woman on top of it. It would have been by I don't know how much.
Yeah. Any other question, Teresa? And then I think we have to wrap it up because it's getting late.
I'll move away from the financial aspect and go a little bit towards the rhetorical one. I'm interested in understanding how, from the point of view of a new entrepreneur with a new idea, how you approach the issue of convincing people. How do you address a mixed audience of people who may be risk takers, may not know anything about what you're doing? So are there some techniques that we can recognize across the board? And from the perspective of the venture capitalists, what is it that you hear and convinces you?
All right, so I'll start. In my case, the sort of target market, it's a market that I know very well. So for me, one of the best and possibly, one of the easiest things to get started with a company that does scientific collaboration was the fact that I was building a tool that I needed before anybody else. So I built something that I was like, whoa, I need this. I've been struggling with writing research papers for the past 15 years. I need something like that. So when I speak to researchers, when I speak to scientists, scholars, I'm speaking essentially to someone that I know very well, fairly, I've been in research for 15 years, so I know them. So one of the best things for me was to really try and relate to the people I'm talking to. Having said that, I also mentioned a few minutes ago that, being a scientist, I'm really bad at selling stuff, and, I'm really bad at marketing. But, I'm learning, and there's clearly, I had to, get out of my academic shell, in a way, to sort of, even I still have to keep a foot in science and academia, but I have to, also know how to be a little more aggressive and professionally pushy, in a way, to, get straight to the point. So, I mean, my, I guess the takeaway point is that, yes, for me, it's a matter of relating to the people, and that's the best way to convince, whether it's customers or users.
Well, from an investor perspective, I think the team, so the founders, is really the main factor. So you want, people like Alberto that know exactly what they're planning to do and know their stuff. As I said, this is a problem he faced and he's trying to solve. That's exactly the type of good entrepreneurs you're looking for. People that have identified a problem and they're trying to solve it. A problem that they experience firsthand. That's the ideal person you're looking for. Somebody that really understands what the problem they're trying to solve. And then you have all the characteristics of an entrepreneur. They're typically driven, they're typically passionate about what they do, and the hopefully you get also people that have maybe been around the block a couple of times and know, they are a second-time entrepreneur, even better. But when you invest in early-stage companies, sometimes that doesn't happen. So you go, you take a chance with people like Alberto, and then you spend time working with them, mentoring them, finding them the right help, and the right collaborators so that they can grow the company. So the team is important. But then there are other factors. Of course, you want to look at the market space you're targeting. You want to make sure that you're targeting a big market, or at least a market that's going to be growing fast, because it's always dangerous to invest in a company that targets a niche market. You want to go after something that can be really, really big, not just because you think this company may actually capture the whole thing and become this huge success, but by very practical reasons. You know that the company may be going down a path. It might not really work out the way we think, because maybe there are competitors we don't know about, maybe there are other things that happen, maybe the market shifts. And if you're going after a large market, you have room to maneuver. If you're going after a niche, you don't. And that's really a big consideration.
Yeah, I think we can go on with the conversation outdoor. And yes, no.
Well, I think we couldn't expect a better beginning of our new series. And I omitted to introduce formally Maria Teresa at the beginning, and I'll do it now because I think she deserves a great deal of appreciation for the group of people that she was able to put together, not only in her book, but in this panel. And in the magisterial way in which she conducted the round table, because very often you have a brilliant group of people and normally brilliant people are very unruly and very difficult to keep on track, and you did a great job at that. And since I sit in that spot very often,
I'm used to Maria Teresa's whip. So
she trained you well. And so the book we presented was Tech and the City, and I also loved the fact that this double entendre with Sex and the City and the charm and the romanticism was kept throughout the event. And I join all of you thanking the members of the panel. Alberto, you could be like the poster boy of brilliant things coming from Italy that actually are realized, that do not remain in the world of dreams, but that take a reality. And I think your story should be known as an example. So thank you very much for what you're doing. And Alessandro, for you, Maria Teresa mentioned, and you also speak in the book about your father and being a figlio d'arte, but a figlio d'arte that decided to have his own arte on the opposite side of the ocean. So that says something about your personality and your own spirit of entrepreneurship. And at the same time, coming from that tradition of the Olivetti, of the great entrepreneurs of after World War II that really took a country in shambles and rebuilt it, and were able to put it on the map in an extraordinary way that is still very hard to explain using rational elements. So you also embodied that tradition. It's a beautiful, noble tradition coming from Italy. And once again, thanks to both of you, and thank you very much to Maria Teresa Cometto. Grazie mille.